الله 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 أكبر لا إله إلا
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. I'm SAJ Bhatt. This is SAJ Mahal. Of the millions of South Asian families across the globe, if we were to ask them this evening, what is your favorite sport? No doubt cricket will be top of the list. Perhaps boxing, maybe wrestling might get a mention. Kabaddi also, hockey definitely, maybe amongst the younger generation, football. But I imagine very few would come up with the game of rugby as one of their favourites. Therefore, this evening's programme is called Who Plays Rugby? Scratch the surface and you will be surprised at the kind of things that are going on. Pleasantly surprised. First and foremost, you may not be aware that there is actually a Pakistan rugby national team for both men and women. More than 40 years ago, one of my guests had a group of youngsters from the British Pakistani heritage community playing rugby and organising them into a highly successful team. We will be meeting that gentleman and one of his great disciples, one of the most successful of his generation. Also, one of our guests this evening will be Ikram Bhatt, no relative, I hasten to add. Ikram Bhatt, almost 30 years ago, became the first British Pakistani to play professional rugby. In 1995, he became the first British Pakistani again to represent England. As I said, there's a lot going on. And how about this? Please don't forget this name. Kamran Siddique, only a matter of weeks ago, became the first British Pakistani to represent, or should I say, captain England at rugby. Quite a feat. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Brian Foley, MEB on my right. What a fantastic, distinguished career. Initially as a police officer, which was tragically cut short due to an almost fatal accident. However, before that, he was able to impress upon His Majesty, who awarded him with a BEM for his services to the young community, particularly for his courage, care and compassion. Now, I could spend 3 hours actually just talking about Brian, his work with Wigan Warriors, considered one of the giants of the game. He's highly sought after nationally and globally, highly respected as a coach. Perhaps his greatest achievement was with his 7-year-old nephew, Herbie, who he's taken to perhaps the pinnacle of the professional game, representing Brisbane Broncos in Australia. So, next to him, to my further right, is one of those disciples that I mentioned, Qamar Iqbal, popularly known as Icky. Icky is a very well-known personality in the Pendle area. He's a very keen sportsman, especially passionate about rugby. He was one of those first players in the multicultural schools, boys' schools rugby team that Brian set up all those years ago. He's currently the operations manager at Pendle Leisure Trust, where he's been working for almost 35 years. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming. So, Brian, where do we start? First and foremost, thanks again for taking the time to come and see us. So let's go back, Brian, to those times almost 40 years ago. When was the first contact you established with these guys, and what kind of brought it about?
Policing yesteryear, you got to think 40 years ago is totally different from now. The demands placed, the principles are still the same, but police today, they're so tired, busy, you know, professionally, etc. And you know, the society, the way it was going, I was brought over this area. I'm not originally from the Pendle area, and I was brought in specifically for a certain task. The Jack Dykes, who's my old superintendent, is 90 years of age, and he's actually watching this programme. Okay. And he was
welcome, Jack.
He was a tremendous inspiration to me, and he encouraged to use what talents I had, what ability I had to. Originally, I was targeting the criminal element, an unruly element that played on certain aspects of the town. And then for the first 2 or 3 years policing, I was dealing with all kinds of, well, people that were going wrong. So I decided to get amongst the young people and try and change.
So are you saying Icky and his mates were going wrong? And
No,
they're troublemakers?
no, far from
How
it.
did you get involved with them, Brian?
Far from it. I went into the schools, got amongst them, and used what I saw, what ability they had, and channeled their energies in the right direction.
Okay, okay. And how good would you say they were, Brian? I mean, obviously they were pretty fresh. They were new to the game.
Oh, they were kids, and the main emphasis was you identified with them, you set them something that they enjoyed. The enjoyment was a big factor.
Yeah.
And you were trying to encourage them to be involved into something, something that they were new to them. It wasn't just the rugby. It wasn't about the rugby. It was about they themselves.
Yeah.
You were trying to,
and the camaraderie and the friendship
camaraderie,
and the interaction with the different communities and so on.
Yes.
Okay, Icky, if I could bring you in. So going back all those years then, what are your earliest memories? And similar to my generation in terms of resistance to playing football and almost opposition hostility, home and on the field, what was your experience in rugby?
Rugby weren't a first game for us. Got involved in it by chance, really. We had a choice of doing cross-country, having Mr. Carradine chase us with a stick doing cross-country, or Brian came into the schools and introduced rugby. Yeah. And I weren't quite into the football side of things, and my best friend, Mubashir Khan, he was a 6-foot giant who would have loved that kind of game, and if you'd seen me at school, you would never have seen me thinking I'll play rugby. I was so tiny. Yeah. But we got into it, absolutely loved it, the team spirit and how Brian engaged with us, and yeah, it was great, a big part of my life. Really?
What about the at home parents? Were they supportive, or was it
parents? No. If anything, my mum just used to just look at my washing at the end of the training session and says, "Oh, why can't you pick a normal sport?" But they just let you get on with what they wanted to do. They enjoyed it, so they let us carry on.
But they would have preferred you to be a doctor.
Yeah, like all Asian families, they would have preferred to be a doctor. But yeah.
Brian, what was your dealings with the parents of these kids? Were they worried about? I mean, it's quite a tough sport. Were they worried about injuries and what he might do, and for their sons to be going out of town and maybe sometimes staying overnight? Were they worried about that kind of thing?
Luckily, I had a good relationship with the parents because most of them knew me. You know, knew me firstly as a police officer because you were amongst the community then. Yeah. And at first, it wasn't acceptable because the physicality, it was unknown. It's certainly unknown the sport to them, but eventually they grew into it. They grew with it.
What were your ambitions for these kids?
The ambitions were to give them something that they could identify with, to get them involved. Certainly not to be professional. That was just the last thing on my mind. Yeah. That was just to engage with them, to, in some ways, maybe get them off the streets.
But one or two were on the verge of professional. Icky, would you have, at that stage, had such ambitions?
Yeah, I got to county level rugby. We had a break after we've left school, and then we rejoined again. And I do think that the training we got in for them days, it was so advanced. You know, I work in the fitness industry, and I remember what we used to do at schoolboy level, and even when we left teenagers going to our 20s, and that training, I just think, wow, we've never ever got that kind of fitness. And there was so many people within our team, if had the support and the background support, not just, you know, like we tried so hard. We had so many barriers in the parade trying to get rugby pitches down at Carr Road, various other places. Schools are always a problem. Teachers didn't like it because all the footballers turned to rugby. And all the best players used to come to us, so they didn't like the fact that we had rugby taking over everything. But there was so much potential with the teams that we had. I mean, we from a non-rugby rugby area, we went and won Lancashire Cup, we won the Yorkshire Cup, we went into an area where, this was an area where no rugby were.
Yes.
They had a couple of rugby union sides on the outskirts. Rugby league were never known on.
Yeah.
But we went into the heart of where rugby league was, Yorkshire, and I think the school team was at St John Fishers. They absolutely thrashed us first time, and we came back and beat them. But yeah, we
Now, you know, you touched on it just now, Kamar, and Brian is very modest and humble about this. But I mean, I've seen his portfolio of how he prepares people, and particularly about Herbie. We'll talk about him a little bit more. I mean, the amount of detail, the professionalism. I mean, as you know, I played sport to a fairly senior level. I've never seen anything like it. Now, Brian, obviously that evolved over time. Now, progressing from these kids, at what point did you get involved with Wigan Warriors and develop that side of things?
It was something throughout the years that I avoided because my sole focus was being a policeman.
Yes.
I didn't want anything else, but I had obviously I had a communication with them because of the lads were the players, not only just them, other clubs, and I was kind of in many ways targeted, but I wasn't really interested because I wanted the best for these.
Yes.
That was my vocation, is to prove a point that they have talent. It wasn't, as I say, it wasn't the rugby, that the talent lied within them, and it was, I thought, my duty, you know, to partly discover and fetch out what talent I could, what ability they had. And sadly, I had an unfortunate injury. My career came to an end, and it was then that the Wigan recontacted me and sought the opportunity, and I just went by, you had to pardon the pun, by accident more than I did by reality of ambition.
Right, fantastic. Thank you. Right, we're opening up the lines now. Dear viewers, if you could kindly please make a note of this number. We would love to hear you call. The phone number is on your screens now. It's 0161 529 9455. We'll look forward to hearing from you. Any questions, any comments to Brian and Kamar? We'd love to hear about your experience. Obviously, tonight's theme is who plays rugby, and we're trying to discover that on the surface, it appears as though the British Pakistani community isn't interested in rugby, and it's something they may consider dangerous, too many injuries, and so forth. But as we've already discovered, that it is something that people are very much involved in and are achieving great success. Right, we already have our first caller. Good evening. Who's calling, please?
Hi, it's Abid calling from Iceberg.
Abid from Iceberg. Abid, really nice to hear from you. Please go ahead. What would you like to ask?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say it's absolutely great to see where Kamar has got to and what Brian has done with him. You know, he's been a real good, inspirational person to a lot of the Asian community, and so has Brian. Brian has really helped out. I remember going for trials once back at Agend with Brian, but I didn't exactly cut it. But getting back to Kamar's really come a long way, and he's been very inspirational to all the youngsters.
That's very kind of you.
You know, he's such a tremendous, awesome guy.
Really?
You know. And what I'd like to know, is he going to continue like this? Because he's working for the health centres, and is he going to actually take this further now? Because we need people like this. We need people like this to go out into the community and do stuff like this, what Brian was doing. So would Kama do something like this?
That's a fantastic question. So Kama's at the Pendle Leisure Trust. I refer to him as a senior manager. I was trying to get him promoted. The exact title is the operations manager, which is pretty senior as it is. And he has, you're right, Abid, devoted much of his senior life to the community and getting them involved in leisure activities. Kama, over to you. So the question really is, what Abid's wanting to know is, can you be the British-Pakistani Brian Foley?
I don't think you'll ever get another Brian Foley, if I'm going to be honest. And thank you, Abid, for ringing in. I must admit, I was dreading you ringing, to be honest. I thought you were going to say something else, but got your sensible head on, thank you. In terms of giving back to the community, I think right now at the moment, there's so much we actually do with my workplace of giving back to the community. And that's not just for the young generation, that's for people of all age groups. Yes, I'd love to be involved with more coaching and things, but I think my work role would involve me getting coaches to get children exercising, taking part in sports. In terms of the Asian community getting involved, things have changed a lot from the time when we used to play rugby. We used to finish school, we used to go to mosque, and that was compulsory all the way through. That was our, if it weren't the first, that we parents classed it as the first education. Now things are changing. Parents are bringing children to sports. That's the younger parents. They're recognising sports. Where our parents didn't, they worked hard, and all they wanted us to do is study, go to mosque, and do some good with our lives. Now, the more modern, younger parents are actually recognising that sport's important as well. Yeah. And I do think it's not long before we start seeing more young Asian people break through in sports. The sports that they are taking part in, they're doing really, really well. And I think without having the support of the parents and the family, that can't happen. And most definitely people like Brian. Now, he's played a massive role in my life. He's part of the family, to be honest with you. My parents, until the late age, still welcomed Brian into our house whenever he came around, and to my friend's house. So, yeah, the thing is, you don't get local police like we did back then, like Brian touched. But yes, definitely through work, I would give him back to the community. And wherever something is going on out there, a lot of my friends' kids are playing sports, a couple of them are playing rugby. I'm always trying to advise, guide, watch, support where I can, and I'd love to see somebody break through to the professional level. And we'd always be, what's better to watch somebody's son that's grown up, that's on TV, and see, the new future stars of this country. Like, we watch Herbie at the moment, and Herbie trained from the age of 7, and I saw what Brian put him through training, and the lad, I knew from day one when he was getting trained, and the way he focused, the way he listened, I knew he'd make it somewhere. And I watch him now live playing at Brisbane Broncos. It's amazing to watch. And I'd love to see somebody from our community do that. I'd always be there to support anyone from the community.
Okay, thank you, Abid. Any further comment before we move on? Right. That's fine. Okay. Right. So that nicely takes us to Herbie Farnworth, nephew of Brian, who he took from the age of 7. He's taken him to Brisbane Broncos, who have been described as the Manchester United of rugby. Not my words, Ziki, these are Brian words. Okay, before you get upset. So Brian, take us from there then. Let's see, you've got young nephew. What did you see in him? Obviously, it's a two-way process. It must have required a level of dedication and commitment from him, from his parents, and obviously from you. So tell us the story, how it evolved, how it happened, and maybe this will be a lesson or inspiration for budding rugby players throughout the land.
It just started as a keen young athlete, multi-talented, multi-sports, and we just took stages at a time. We never, it was like these lads, you just, the enjoyment factor, and it just built from there, 7 and 8, 9, 10, 11, you just let him enjoy what he was doing. Herbie was ultra keen, very, very gifted, a rare athlete, and it was like the icing on the cake. You know, like for years and years, you've brought so many lads through professional, and what was more important to me is that they themselves as people. But Herbie, he had that special talent, the ability, very similar to these lads as well. But he had that extra, that little bit extra there. He sees everything.
Was he really motivated, Brian? Well, I mean,
he's always
it's
been
a two-way
motivated.
process, isn't it? You can be the best coach, you can try and motivate. If the kids don't wake up in time and, you know, the missing training and so forth. Yeah,
Herbie is that extra specially motivated, and he knows there is, to be reached where is, even at this stage where he reached, you've got to be different.
Yes.
You've got to be different from your peers. You've got to be that special person that wants to do it more than most, and that's what he's gone to do. You know, I've just been there with experience along the way, but a lot of it is from him. Yeah. I mean, Kama, you were telling me about, was it how many consecutive games or training sessions? I could.
Oh, yeah. I never missed a training session ever since I played for Pendle Lions, and I never ever missed a game.
Right.
It was the highlight of the week for me.
Yeah.
And a proud moment when we had our presentation evening one year, and I didn't even know that I'd achieved the taking part in 100 consecutive rugby games, the only person to do it, and I got awarded one of our rugby strips with 100 on. I've still got that, by the way, and it probably stay with me through life. But it was a proud moment. I mean, it's quite an achievement, you know. Rugby. I mean, any sport, especially contact sport, one is prone to injuries, and you know it can happen all the time. To carry on playing 100 games consecutive is quite a feat.
It is incredible. Icky, as he said, he never missed a training session. Yeah. He was at the heart and soul of the team. Right. You know, he never. Well, of course, we recognised. You know, he's what all along he was there at training, perhaps the first at training, the last to leave. But you look at him now, what he's turned into, and that's as important, more important than anything. That is the main emphasis. It's good that some of these lads go on, which many have to be professionals and gain international honours, but there's also another factor, is the person themselves. Good time. We're very shortly, we'll be having the Isha prayer, 1 minute left. But then when we come back, that's an aspect of the sport of rugby that I want to explore further. You know, I mean, any sport, particularly team sport, we know and recognise that it's very good for motivating young people, getting on in life and so forth. It gives them that discipline in life and so forth. But it has been said, particularly of rugby, you know, the discipline that you pass. So we'll talk further about that, hopefully. I mean, Icky, you're right. I mean, we are very fond of him. He's life and soul of the party, if you like. I don't think he's really ever been the same since he cut his long hair, to be honest with you. But right, so we'll shortly be leaving. Thank you for the time being, gentlemen. And dear viewers, we're going to be leaving you in a few seconds for the Isha prayer times. And after that, the lines will be open, and please do take the time to call in and put your comments and questions to my guests.
जिंदा है वल्ला तू जिंदा है वल्ला तू जिंदा है वल्ला तू जिंदा है वल्ला तू जिंदा है वल्ला मेरे चश्मे आलम से छुप जाने वाले मेरे चश्मे आलम से छुप जाने वाले मेरा दिल भी چمکا دے چمکانے والے میں مجرم ہوا کا میں مجرم ہوں
اللہ اللہ
آقا میں مجرم ہوں آقا مجھے ساتھ لے لو کہ راستے میں ہیں جا بجا تھانے والے یہ راستے میں جا بجا تھانے والے تو شروع سے ہیں لیکن اب ان کی کثرت کچھ زیادہ ہی ہو گئی ہے تو دل سے ہم یہی التجا کرتے ہیں میں مجرم ہوں آقا مجھے ساتھ لے لو کہ راستے میں ہیں جا بجا تھانے والے کے راستے میں ہیں جا بجا تھانے والے رضا 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 نفس دشمن ہے دم میں نہ آنا کہاں تم نے دیکھے ہیں چندرانے والے کہاں تم نے دیکھے ہیں چندرانے والے میرا دل بھی چمکا دے چمکانے والے چمک تجھ سے پاتے ہیں سب پانے والے زندہ ہے واللہ تو زندہ ہے واللہ تو زندہ ہے واللہ تو زندہ ہے واللہ تو زندہ ہے واللہ میرے چشم عالم سے چھپ جانے والے میرے چشم عالم سے چھپ جانے والے میرا دل بھی چمکا دے چمکانے والے میں مجرم ہوا کا میں مجرم ہوں
اللہ اللہ
آقا میں مجرم ہوں آقا مجھے ساتھ لے لو کہ راستے میں ہیں جا بجا تھانے والے یہ راستے میں جا بجا تھانے والے تو شروع سے ہیں لیکن اب ان کی کثرت کچھ زیادہ ہی ہو گئی ہے تو دل سے ہم یہی التجا کرتے ہیں میں مجرم ہوں آقا مجھے ساتھ لے لو کہ راستے میں ہیں جا بجا تھانے
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to SAJ Mahal, who's playing rugby, tonight's theme. I believe we have a very distinguished guest on the line, a gentleman called Ijaz. Sorry, Ikram Bhatt. Apologies, Ikram. Dr. Ikram Bhatt. Yeah, we're hoping he will be on the line shortly. Whilst we're waiting for him to come on the line, just remind everybody what a trailblazer this gentleman is. Almost 30 years ago, he became the first professional rugby player. He also represented first British Pakistan to represent England at rugby. He's done a tremendous amount of work behind the scene to develop the game, not only in this country but in Pakistan, who he actually captained. He captained the Pakistan national rugby team. So there's a lot of experience there. And Brian has known him really well, and I'm grateful to Brian for setting this meeting up. Dr. Ikram Bhatt, welcome to our show. Now, before people start ringing in and asking for a prescription, can you clear up this doctor bit? At what stage was that awarded to you? Yeah. Can you hear me, Ikram? Okay. So we're just having a few problems with the line, so we'll try and get that sorted as quickly as possible. We'll just raise the topic of Herbie Farnworth again. It's something I want to explore further with Brian. I mean, I've seen your portfolio, Brian. I mean, the dossier that you've compiled for Herbie, the detail and depth in terms of diet and nutrition, the sprinting techniques, the discipline, the dedication, and sacrifices, both of you. So just take us on that tour and journey, if you like, of how you nurtured Herbie and what your thoughts are in terms of discovering another Herbie, perhaps within the British Asian community.
Herbie, as I mentioned earlier, is a special athlete with a special attitude, but is a good person as well. You know, he's very tough, mentally very focused, physically capable, and I think what Herbie's done, especially in this area, has gone virtually into the unknown. He's gone into an area, originally he made his mark around this area. We challenged himself in Wigan.
Yeah.
And wherever he goes, he surpasses.
Yes.
He adapts, he conquers, and he moves on.
Yeah.
And when he got to the age of 14, we decided that if he wanted to be the best, then we challenge ourselves with the best, even though at that young age. So I spoke to Mum and Dad and Herbie, and we were ultra keen. So we spent a 7-week period in Australia.
Wow.
We went to Australia. And whilst we were in Australia, I met Brisbane Broncos aware that we were coming out, and everybody catered for us very good. And from that moment, he entered Australia, played in the level of the competition, which he played a good level over here.
Yeah.
He set them the challenges that he met there, and this is a type of attitude. Well, that's what he wanted.
So, Brian, having worked with kids of that age, I mean, that is the age, isn't it? 14, 15, possibly 16, when they start possibly losing interest, things get a bit tough, the demands are greater than ever before in terms of training and so forth. What was it? Did you find at any stage with Herbie, perhaps, you know, things are going to wane off? Did you have to provide extra motivation for him? Or is he just that special person who wanted it so badly that, you know, it was never such a problem for you?
No, it was never faded in any way whatsoever. It was determined. He had a special athlete with that special attitude.
And that's what distinguishes the special ones, the successful ones from the also-rans.
Yeah.
Right, I believe Ikram might be back with us. Can we try that now? Ikram, can you hear me, please?
I can hear you loud and clear, Saj.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. I've got Brian here, who I know you know particularly well, and who's helped to set up this meeting. I've got Kamar Iqbal, a local celebrity who you may know of, but he certainly knows of you. So we've already introduced you, your distinguished career and the fantastic contribution you made to rugby, not only in this country, but in Pakistan as well. Please share with us and our audience some of your experiences, highlights, and any advice that you might be able to give youngsters who are hoping to follow in your footsteps.
Well, firstly, walaikum salam. Thank you for inviting me on, Saj. Special thank you to Brian, the legend in rugby. And Kamal, I don't think we met, so it's pleased to meet you, and Assalamu alaikum. Well, I've been involved in rugby for a very long time. And I'm very lucky to have a great career out of it. Lots of enjoyment, met so many new friends, and a really fulfilling, wholehearted career. My highlights, when I look back with very fond memories, signing from my hometown club, Leeds Liners, as they were known back then. They're known as Leeds Rhinos now. Scoring on my debut, playing along some great players, and to this day, 30, 40 years on, still friends, very close, so we get together every so often. And I think that's the beauty about rugby league in particular, a very family-orientated game. And I can say in all the clubs that I played, to this day I have very close friends, and some brothers and sisters that I can call upon, just like Brian, if I can call him uncle. But he's uncle, father figure, to many young players. And it's certainly a true inspiration. And I certainly learned a hell of a lot from this outstanding individual on and off the field. One of the other highlights. Thank you. One of the highlights was. Thank you. Starting at Leeds. Where I struggled really to make a breakthrough, they had a lot of great players playing, and still do. So the first coach that actually signed me on was a gentleman who sadly passed away now. But for me, certainly one of the greatest coaches there ever was, the great Peter Fox. Certainly comes from a family of rugby league greats. His brother Neil has gone down as one of the greatest players in rugby league, and Peter Fox, one of the greatest coaches in rugby league. He signed me when I was at Leeds, and then re-signed me. I got a little bit disillusioned with the game. I was struggling to make a breakthrough. I was struggling to get an opportunity, and then I got a chance to go to Australia. And I spent 6 months out there. I was only 19 at that time. But Peter rang me and said, I've got a position on the wing at Featherstone Rovers, where he was then. And I said, can I play centre? At that time he had two great players, Paul Newlove and Terry Manning. So when he mentioned those two names, I said, playing on the wing will do. And I never really looked back. Peter was a father figure to me, helped me to develop my game. And not only Jack, but like Brian, become a better person. And I think that's really important, because Peter and Brian, they look at your character above all else. And if you've got a good character, you certainly have good standing and a platform to go on and develop and become a better player and a better person. I'm very grateful for those two individuals who helped me along my way. Certainly couldn't do it myself, that's for sure. A lot of people, great people along the way. My father, for example, is a great role model, has been, was sadly passed away when I was only 11. But the sort of early teachings, the discipline, the respect, the desire to succeed was ingrained in us, me, myself, and my brothers early on, and that stood in good testimony till this day. And obviously, playing for England during the 1995 European Championships, and going on to not only play but captain my mother country, Pakistan, at rugby union. So a different code, but still the same sport and still the same passion. And to see the passion from homegrown Pakistanis playing sport at a very good level was certainly an honour and a pleasure for me.
Ikram, you just mentioned about playing for Pakistan and captaining Pakistan. Have you still got involved with the national team there, or is that no longer the case?
No, the links are still there, very strong indeed. Unfortunately, COVID has had a global effect, so sport across the board has or did stop. It's certainly getting back together now. You know, the relationships that we continue to develop, sending players from UK to Pakistan and players from Pakistan coming to the UK. So the current captain of Pakistan, a gentleman called Kashif Khwaja, came up to UK, did his masters at Leeds University. You know, we got him onto a number of coaching qualifications, played both rugby league and rugby union out here. And that has continued to this day. So there's certainly a reciprocal arrangement around player-centered coach development, enhancing rugby across the board. You know, I'm pleased to say we also went on. We took a school to Pakistan and played in a reciprocal arrangement. But more importantly, as well as developing rugby for boys, girls rugby was played out there. We coached and developed them, and I'm pleased to say that Pakistan have a national men's team alongside the national women's team. So rugby is flourishing throughout Pakistan and across South Asia.
Fantastic. So that is what we're trying to explore, actually. So just very quickly then, I would imagine that a good proportion of the Pakistani national team are British Pakistani players. Would that be correct? And is there quite a few homegrown in the sense that, you know, residing in Pakistan players?
It was at one stage, early 2000, when I was going on a regular basis, and we took a number of British-born players to help and support the developments of what was going on. But as we speak now, the national team is made up of all homegrown players. You know, they took a stance, and something that I fully supported.
Okay, that's very interesting. That. Okay, Ikram, we really appreciate. I know you're very busy and you've got other commitments. So we are able to get you and Brian to talk to each other. Would you like to ask or leave a message, Brian to Ikram, to Brian?
Thank you, Ikram. Nice seeing you. Nice meeting with you, even though it's a fair distance. But happy memories, Ikram, especially when we did those national camps. Never forget those. And I think you and we proved what enjoyment is, especially to a lot of young players on those camps. And well done to all you've done, Ikram, and being a doctor as well. How special is that?
Well, too kind. Two words from a true gentleman, something that I hold in the highest regard. And just a very quick message, Brian. Congratulations on the Queen's honours, for sure, fully deserved. Also, David Griffins, who I'm in contact with, just literally come off the phone with him, sends his regards.
Oh, thank you,
Ikram,
congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure for us, and we will no doubt maintain contacts, and we will revisit these topics again and again, because we all love sport. Any team sport we know is how extremely valuable it is to developing the character of kids, and we're going to develop this theme further now. We're beginning to run out of time. I think we've only got 5 minutes left, believe it or not, gentlemen. So, Brian, let's pick up that baton again of Herbie and Brisbane Broncos. Tell us, you know, what a special club that is and what a significant achievement that is for somebody, a kid from this area, small town Nelson, to go out there as far as Australia and to represent and play for and shine in one of the greatest rugby clubs in the world.
I think Herbie's really sent a message out for 40 years later, should I say 20 years later, what Icky, Basher, and they pioneered the way.
Yes.
And I think Herbie's sent a real message out to all young people that, why not you?
Yes.
There's a talent there, and it's, I think, Weir's now, Hickey's in the position, you're in the position.
Mm-hmm.
I virtually, Herbie's my swan song more than anything, but it's a nice way to go out when you see a boy that fulfills his dream, and is fulfilling a dream, but there's so much talent out there, and I think it's up to us as adults. I know the education system as it stands. These lads didn't, I hope you don't mind me saying, abide by the education system as such, academically, but they've achieved many good things in life. And that Pendle team, when you look back on it, quite a lot of lads have done well for themselves.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah.
And I think Herbie sent the main message out that you go for it. You can do it. He set an example to us all, a shining example, really, that you can really do it if you put your mind to it. And you go for it and try.
Fantastic, thank you. We've only got a couple of minutes left, believe it or not. Now, instead of calling, I have a text message comment from a lady, a young British Pakistani lady, a mother of a budding talented rugby player, and her messages or comment, I was thinking to say that most Asian parents watching rugby games think that this is such a rough game, we're not letting our kids get injured playing it. But my feelings are, this is this lady's message, but it can happen in any game. I think there should be more awareness of the game, especially to our Asian community. There are quite a lot of skills and benefits which kids can learn through this game. Respect, discipline, teamwork, etc. So that's a young mother, Pakistani mother whose son is aspiring to be a rugby player, is picked up on these things. So in the last minute to come out, just you quickly, what is your experience or what would you like to say in just summing up?
In terms of rugby league, it did teach you a lot of life skills, especially with having a coach like Brian. There was never a swearing word allowed, commitment, loyalty, and I've seen a lot of people come from different schools that joined in that team that was started off as a punishment, but they played rugby and they turned out in the right path.
Thank you. Brian, just quickly summing up, please. 20 seconds left. Wow.
I think the main thing is, the message tonight is enjoy what you do.
Yeah.
Challenge yourself. If you can go for it, go for it.
Yes.
But try and do everything as right and as honest as possible.
Yeah.
And have
10 seconds. Quickly, I like to say, when ambition, motivation, discipline, focused objectives meet hard work and dedication, it's amazing what you can achieve. Thank you very much for listening, viewing. Thank you especially to my guests for taking the time out. It's been a real pleasure and privilege to have you. Dr. Ikram Bhatt, thank you very much. Good night. Assalamu alaikum.
Allah, Allah, Allahu Akbar. Allah, Allah, Allah.